Welcome to the Intuitive Psychology podcast. Helen Marie, it is so lovely to have you on our podcast. Welcome.
Oh, thank you both so much for having me. It's gorgeous to see you both again. It really is.
Yeah, we feel exactly the same about you. So we connected a few months ago now. Wow, actually, it probably was a good few months ago now when we were down in your podcast studio in London, and we had such a beautiful conversation about intuition. And we just knew that we had to have you on our podcast because we know that so many of our listeners will love to connect with you and hear all of your wisdom, and everything that you're going to share on this episode.
Oh, you're very, very kind. It was so gorgeous to connect with you both. I love the work you're doing and I see what you're doing all the time. And it's beautiful. You bring so many people together as well with it, which is such a beautiful skill, isn't it? To bring that community together, which I so often feel we're missing these days. So I love that about the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you. And speaking of community, you have an incredible Instagram community that you've grown. And I'd love to start there because therapist and therapy work traditionally has been almost like it's a private office. You walk in, you kind of close the door and that's the relationship that you have. What sparked the idea for you to start bringing more of the snippets of your work and expertise into the online space? How did that begin?
That's a great question. I don't think I've ever deeped it and thought about why I did that. I suppose I used to have a very different Instagram. I always loved social media. When my children were teenagers, I used to have a blog space where I wrote about parenting teenagers. And it was quite a humorous kind of blog until sadly parenting teenagers became not very funny. And then I kind of took a step back from that and realized, oh, I don't think I really want to share this side of my personal journey so much. And so I took a real back step from writing about that. And actually, I trained later in life as a therapist. And that's when I then went on and started to train and did my training as a therapist at Regents and did my training with them, Regents University in London. And it was my second career. I had a different career before. I worked for the Health Protection Agency, I was an infectious disease specialist. But parenting my three children, it soon became apparent that it's not always easy. And through my parenting, someone very close to me really struggled with their mental health. Even as I'm saying this, I can feel the flutters in my chest and it's coming back, that feeling of there's so much tension there. And it was a really, really hard time. And this person who's very close to me got incredible help from this is a very long-winded answer, by the way. Got some incredible help from psychotherapists, psychiatrists, and it really struck me one day when I was having a conversation with a very close friend that I wanted to shift career and I wanted to give back. I wanted to give back what these people had given us as a family and helped us just unbelievably. And so I retrained, which was amazing. It was the best decision I ever made and became a therapist. But I missed the social engagement of that writing and connecting with the community. But incidentally, I had a very small following then. It was probably only about 25,000 people. And I said to everyone, right, I'm changing track, completely changing. And they stayed with me and then it grew and grew and grew. And I wanted to share accessible information for people that I'd never had access to. And I felt incredibly alone in my journey. And I wanted to share with other people that, you know, people struggle and it's okay to struggle and there's help out there. And yeah, it just blossomed and bloomed from there. And it's been a love relationship. I can't even say love hate. It's been a beautiful relationship with social media and sharing those like little snippets of wisdom and like little places to go, signposting people to get more curious about themselves, So yeah, I suppose it's a great question, Sarah. I suppose it started from there. Yeah.
Gorgeous. I didn't realize that you were an infectious disease specialist before.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
amazing. So that that pivot, I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast in particular, they will really, really resonate with your story. So thank you for sharing. I think often people who are drawn to these professions, whether it's coaching, therapy, psychology,
Mm.
something has normally happened in your life where you have experienced the power of this work. And then when you kind of experience that, you want to share it with others.
Yeah.
When you made that decision to kind of retrain and leave, was there any part of you that was fearful of what was on the other side, or intuitively did you just know that it felt right?
I knew it felt right. I knew it felt right. And obviously, I had nerves about going back to study again. This was I'd done my degree and my master's in public health. I'd done lots of other training, but this was a complete change. And also, I was an older student, and that was weird to feel older doing this, it's like a natural, for me, I was very privileged, and I'm conscious of that I did have the ability to do my first degree and my master's, and then having the opportunity to do this again later in life. But no, I think there was a real knowing that I had to do this. This is what I really wanted to do. And when you were speaking then, it reminded me that I remember when I was in the interview, the psychotherapist taking the interview said to me, why do you want to do this? And I spoke about my story. And it was very emotional for me what he said next. He said to me, that must have been really hard for you. And I remember thinking, I'd never thought about it being hard for me. I'd always thought about how hard it was for the person that I was caring for. And it was a big pivotal moment that, gosh, actually, mental health and well-being ripples through society and actually touches so many of us in so many different ways. And you made another point, Sarah, there where you said about very often when we go into these professions, we've got a story. Again, I hadn't really appreciated that. And I remember sat in a lecture once, and there were three psychotherapists. They were all Harley Street psychotherapists, top in their game. And they sat there and said, every single therapist has their own story.
Yeah.
And it was that real connecting point of not feeling alone in it. And I think so often we feel so alone, but that connecting of community, yeah, it was, yeah. So that kind of fed the way of like, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm not alone in this. It kind of confirms that knowing, doesn't it?
Yeah, I want to ask you, Helen, because I could really feel that energy as you were talking about the pathway to you becoming a therapist and what you navigated personally. And then when you said, I had never really thought about how it impacted me, and I want to ask, how important do you feel it is that therapists and people in the wellness space actually do their own inner work?
I mean, it's a non-negotiable for me, and my training was incredibly rigorous. We had to do 100 hours a year of, oh no, sorry, 50 hours a year of personal therapy throughout our training, and it, yeah, it tears you apart inside out, and you have to know what it's like to be on that other side. You have to know what it really feels like. But I think, further to your question, Jill, I think absolutely therapists should be in therapy. We are always learning, we are always healing, we are always on a journey. We don't reach a point where we're done. Life always throws something else at you, and it's about acknowledging the humanness in everyone, whether they're a therapist of 20, 30 years or newly started or whatever, wherever they are on their journey, you are always learning and evolving. I bring this quote up such a lot, but one of my favorite quotes is not, it's not verbatim, but by Nietzsche was, we are always in a process of becoming. And I think that's so important to hold, we don't really ever get there, do you? Where's there, where is it? you know
There is no destination. I think that we lose ourselves really when we're trying to focus on a destination. We miss that the power in the present moment of being. And that's the magic when we can actually take space to, oh, just land where you are at in this moment, like this moment, and the moments that will come after this, and the moments that you maybe had this morning. A lot of the time, we're rushing to try and get somewhere, but where is that? Because how many times have we actually looked back and said, "Oh, take me back." When I see pictures of my kids from like when they were really, "Oh, take me back." Now they're kind of in that teenage hormonal period. I'm like, "Oh, take me back to when they weren't, cheeky to me." And but then at those moments, I was looking back, "Oh, take me back." And it's like a reminder again to be, the moment is now. It's
Yeah.
in this present moment. And I'd love to ask you, like, how do you, because you have this beautiful calm energy, right? And how do you maintain that
Mm.
connection to calm? Because you definitely radiate that. And I'm sure it's not like that all the time, but what are your typical practices to really come back to center, Helen?
Thank you for saying that. And you said I don't think it is that all the time. I would probably say it is most of the time now because I've done an awful lot of work and there's a and I am still learning and I'm still constantly soaking up information. But I think one of the biggest game changers for me has been understanding my nervous system, understanding what's actually happening on a hour by hour basis, a day by day basis, understanding when I'm activated. And for anyone listening, I urge you to look at the work of Deb Dana and look at the work of Stephen Porges and the polyvagal theory and really understanding the nervous system from a neuroscience perspective, really. Because I feel it should be taught to everyone in school, because once I understood my nervous system, have I got time just to explain a little bit
Yeah,
about the ladder system?
absolutely. Love to hear that.
So the work I teach is very much based on Deb Dana's ladder system, where I literally place the ladder on my body, figuratively speaking, of
Mhm.
course. And at the top is the ventral vagal part of the ladder. And I've placed my hand on my chest for those who are listening and not watching. And here, even as I do this, the world feels safe. I wonder if, like, both of you could do that now
Yeah,
and
I'm gonna do
just,
it. I'm gonna join you.
I know. And what do you notice?
Yeah, it feels really centering, like
Yeah,
instantly. Just like
yeah.
all my awareness is just drawn to where the hand and where the heart is, and it feels really, yeah, centering is the word.
Jill, what about you?
Warm. Like there's a connection to warmth and to hand-body connection, right? It's
Yeah.
brought it back into to this space of I'm touching my own body right now. Yeah, like that kind of orienting around my own body,
Yeah.
um, which has instantly brought me back to me. So
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
to me.
Both of you coming to that centered grounding, the words, the language you were using. Now, when we're in this state at the top of the ladder, this is when the executive functions of our brain, you girls will know this, but I'm just, explaining for listeners. This is when the executive functions of our brain are what we call in therapy online. So our prefrontal cortex, our real parenting brain, the rationing, the reasoning is online, it's functioning. this is when we can really connect with a deeper inner knowing and we feel safe. So throughout my day, and I'll come to this in a minute, I regularly, if I'm not feeling this energy, just place my hand here, bring myself back to myself, and it's called our ventral energy. And Deb Dana talks about this beautifully. She says, we have an abundance of this energy. We can access it at any time. It's not a limited resource. So just knowing that we've got access to that calmer state is there, just if we remember to access it. Now, the second rung of the ladder is I always take my hand to my heart, though I don't want people to get confused with the fact that I put it in my heart. Let's say chest. And this is our sympathetic state. This is our fight flight. This is when we feel a bit more activated. We're fired up. We've whatever's going on. We're running late, or we've run out of coffee, or much worse. But I'm talking about the general, how we can go into that state. Someone's upset us, fight flight activated. But knowing when you're catching yourself through the day that you're in that state, someone's agitated you, or you've had an argument with someone, or it's going towards an argumentative state, just coming back to the top of the ladder, hand on heart, what I should say is when you're in sympathetic, your prefrontal cortex has very much gone offline. It's not there. You can't access it. So in here, we feel anxious. Our intuition is much more urgent. Everything's much more urgent around our neuroception here. So coming back to that top of the ladder, the ventral vagal, bring that prefrontal cortex back online. Let that ventral energy run into your sympathetic fight flight, and you'll find it won't be so urgent. You will behave differently in that state. And then at the bottom of the ladder is what we call our dorsal, which is in our gut, where we go into shutdown. We're numb. We just want to cozy up with blankets. The world feels dark. We don't want to engage today. So when you talk about me being calm, I know how to access it, and I know what the tools are to bring me back to that safer place. It's a very basic way. I've just whizzed through that, but just to help people understand. But also your intuition looks different on all those levels, your intuition when you're in your ventral vagal top of the ladder state is more calming, I say intuitive, like a deeper trusting knowing, whereas your intuition and your sympathetic is more urgent, anxious, looking around, what's going on, don't feel safe, literally pulling on all those cues, aren't you, for looking for that safety. And then again in dorsal, your intuition is it's different. It doesn't feel as accessible. So I always say to people, in terms of trusting yourself, don't try and trust yourself in sympathetic or dorsal. Come back to ventral, and then there's probably a deeper layer of trust there.
Yeah, I love that you've kind of used, trust and intuition in the same, sentences, because I think that is, when we're connected to our intuition, there is that deeper sense of trust. Like what role does intuition play in your life?
I think it I think it dances all the way through. I don't think I'm someone who ever ignores it. I'm constantly looking for those cues of confirmation, or I'm looking for it. But then I'm a therapist, I notice. So yes, it's there all the time and I'm listening, but I'm also very conscious to make sure that when I'm listening to it, what's going on for me in that moment, because sometimes your intuition can be wrong. So if you think about it, if you're feeling really dysregulated and then you meet someone, a friend, and you don't like their energy that day, is it them or is it you because you're really dysregulated and a bit short and a bit, you've got too much going on? Sometimes we don't read the room as well if we're dysregulated. So I always try and come back to myself like, okay, so there's something going on, something feels off, but how am I today? Am I centered? Am I grounded? Because I think if I'm not centered and grounded, it might be some of my own energy there as well. And
Definitely.
they're just reacting off of my energy.
Definitely. I mean, we know from the science and psychology, ancient wisdom, even our own lived experience, that intuition and the nervous system are so intrinsically linked with each other. You know, when we're in that regulated state, we can access it, you know, with ease. And sometimes that's that intuitive nudge. Sometimes it's the hidden depths where you can elicit some of that wisdom, you know, for yourself. But when I think back to kind of my own life, like, you know, 7, 8 years ago, I mean, I was so in my head that if you had have said like place your hand on your chest, you know, it would have been really difficult for me to focus because I still would have been in my head, and I probably would have been thinking more like when I did that exercise, just noticing the contrast of, you know, a different version of me probably would have placed the hand on, but still would have had that chatter in my head going, what does Helen Marie want me to say? What's a good answer? I don't know how this feels. I can't trust how I feel. It's a hand on my chest. I don't know what should I say? Whereas as soon as I do that, I'm like, I'm dropped in instantly. Like I feel that deep connection. What would you say to someone whose nervous system is really dysregulated, you know, high pressured, high environment jobs, the way that me and Jill both were in our corporate environment, a lot going on, that almost that even that action feels like a step too far, or they don't want to close down? Where do you begin to kind of regulate your nervous system?
It's such a good question because, you know, the three of us in the room have done a lot of work. And so we know how important it is to access the body or get into the body. But for so many people, they are cognitive beings. And the thought of even active or listening to their body feels so woo-woo. They can't even go there. So I think, as you know, there's not a one size fits all. There isn't. And it's about even someone just getting a little bit curious. Now, what I would say is that the people listening to your podcast are curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say the people listening here today have a want to not be so cognitive. So we're not looking at people who are so in their head, they wouldn't even press play on this podcast because there's too much of a block there already. So I'm holding some awareness that the people listening are interested or they're curious. And I think even just using those words, okay, I'd like to get a little bit curious about my body. So we're not expecting people to be able to automatically place their hand here and be able to do it. But I wonder whether they did place the hand on their chest and notice there's no right or wrong. Journal on it. When I did that exercise from listening to that podcast, I felt that I couldn't access it. Okay, why couldn't I access it? What are my blocks? Where else could I read information about this? Where could I be signposted to? What other podcasts could I listen to? How would it feel to try a meditation? I can never do meditation. My thoughts are going. Just get curious about you. You know, I always say to my clients when they start with me, bring a journal with you. And this becomes the book of you, you know, and every week we don't journal in session, but just they will jot down things that have come up, keywords, or they will come back to the journal in the week and add, you know, this came up for me this week. I found this hard. Or, oh, wow, I was able to sit in stillness for 5 minutes with my cup of coffee this morning.
Yeah.
Even it could be as small as that. A beautiful exercise that I do with people who find it very hard to access their body is to cup their hands just slightly. And then, I mean, you might try it with me now.
I'm gonna do it, yeah.
You both are so beautifully intuitive and body connected. But just cup your hands and just cup and tap all over your body,
Mm.
all down your arms, across your
Mm.
collarbones, over your chest, on your tummy, all the way down your legs. just
Mm.
all the way down to your ankles, and just cupping and cupping.
Yeah.
Now, for me, the first time I ever tried this, I did have a little bit of a moment where, oh, gosh, I'm a body as well, I'm a person.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly powerful for me in terms of I matter too. I'm not just this consciousness. I actually have a form. And it could be as simple as that, as someone trying. Or as I said, it could be just 5 minutes in silence with a cup of coffee. It could be taking a couple of moments to look outside of the window and take in your environment and think, notice the trees, a person walking past. What do I notice in my body when I'm looking at that? So it's tiny. I would say start tiny, 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 and just move on from there.
But the little things are the big things. I love that you said that. I actually did that this morning, all over my whole body,
Did
the
you?
tapping. Just bringing my body back online and feeling that sense. And again, it's that intuitive nudge. Okay, just tap your body now. What I need is to stretch. What I need is to swing my arms around, whatever that is. And what I hear you saying, what I'm getting from this is intention. So even if we just put like intention behind it, so when we're sitting with that coffee, because sometimes we'll sit with that coffee and we're not present. We're like, I need to gub this coffee because I need
Mm.
to then run out the door to do my things or whatever that is. I've got so many things and we're in our mind. But actually, if we take a pause,
Yeah,
3 deep breaths, and with the intention to, I'm going to be present with my cup of coffee
yeah,
and I'm going to breathe. And that, even just for 3 to 4 minutes, right? It builds
yes,
trust within ourselves and it turns those little signals online. Everything starts to come online. And it might even just be, wow, I was present for more than 1 minute there. And actually, when I go out a walk, I'm not going to take my phone with me. My intention is to be present. And I think the magic of being present in those moments allows us to
mm,
turn those parts of ourselves and let them come online, like feeling the body. What do I notice? What do I hear? Sometimes we just hear our thoughts, but it's like when I set the intention to be present with my coffee or in the garden or out a walk, what do I hear? What else do I hear? What else do I hear? Let's like even count in the number of things that we can hear. Suddenly I can hear the traffic. Then I can hear the birds, I can hear my footsteps, and our senses just become heightened. I know for me, just simple, the small things, like you said, they are the biggest things because suddenly I'm online and I'm like, not online as in virtually
no, no,
online.
no,
Yeah.
no.
I mean, my body's online and I'm feeling things. And those small things are the biggest things because it's that deeper connection to my body. And so I think it's really important to have intention, even if it's just for 5 minutes. What is my intention? It's just to sit and be present. And then everything else, I think, for me anyway, is birthed from that. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And as you were talking, I was thinking we must be mindful that for some people, I know how hard just those 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, but gosh, that's a long way of saying 5 minutes. It can be incredibly hard to be present for 5 minutes. And I think that we need to acknowledge here that for some people with severely dysregulated nervous systems, even listening to this could feel very challenging that, oh, that Jill, Sarah, and Helen are telling me just to sit for 5 minutes. Why can't I do it? So I would just hold some space for those people that if your nervous system feels so dysregulated that you can't do that, to maybe look to get some more support.
Hmm.
Because as you both know, it is never too late to work on yourself, to feel, and I know there'll be people listening that cannot imagine, but there will be a day that you will be able to feel ease, to feel joy, to feel contentment when it has probably never ever felt accessible to you. And I think that's so important just to mention that there.
Definitely. I mean, I know for myself, like I was definitely a conscious being. I thrived because I think intellect gave me control, and being in my head, it was a way to keep me safe, and I'm grateful for that part because it deeply served me. But I didn't even realize, probably because I think maybe at different stages my awareness wasn't ready to hold it, how dysregulated my nervous system was. I would get into a car, like just a regular car journey, and I would like gently grip the side of the car because the whole car journey I would be thinking the car's going to crash and I'm going to die. Like that's what's going to happen in the car. Like I couldn't, I was just constantly kind of like like just activated, but it was my normal, like that was my baseline. And I knew it wasn't, I knew other people didn't feel like that, but I didn't realize how much it was impacting me. But that curiosity and noticing was the gateway to the deeper work. Like that was the gateway to the deeper work for me, because when I started to kind of tune in, and I can remember like when you said like I have a body and I matter, I can remember getting the train to work one day and I was like walking across one of the railway bridges, and I was like, I was so in my head that I had this like sudden moment, and it was definitely like that flash of, intuition and knowing, like a download, where I was like, wow, you're not just your head, you're your body. But it was like I couldn't feel my body, like I was so disconnected from it. But that sparked, rather than the judgment, that sparked almost this, what's caused that disconnect? Like what's going on within my body? How can I feel in my body? How can I trust it? And that was a real journey. Um, what does cause a dysregulated nervous system? Like, let's just speak to that. Like, so if you have it, and there's varying degrees, in my case, like my nervous system is, very dysregulated. And a lot of that was, like a lot of trauma that I really hadn't dealt with, and I didn't know how to deal with. And I've gone through that process, and I now feel that deep sense of inner peace that I never imagined possible. Like I never thought that was possible. But what can be some of the things that cause that dysregulated nervous system?
I mean, it's a big question, isn't it?
Mhm.
And, again, it could be so many factors, but trauma does really come into that. And I think understanding that we never know what someone's been through, and they might not even have an awareness of what they've been through. So I think trauma in terms of single event, big trauma, or we could be looking at a lot of the work that I do, which is complex PTSD and relational and developmental trauma from not having secure starts in life. And then people have never ever learned what it feels like to sit within a regulated nervous system. So they've, maybe someone's grown up with an alcoholic mother or a depressed father or drug addicts, or incredibly emotionally unavailable parents. So they've never had that secure base of what it feels like to feel regulated, loved, and cared for. And gosh, that makes me feel emotional when I think about that cupping work we just did, and of the body, and the fact that that body may never have been held safely by anyone. And gosh, how do you let someone hold you safely if you've never been held safely before? So I think trauma is a big part of that. Developmental relational trauma, upbringing, attachment can have huge impacts on how we then become, I don't know, overwhelmed, overworked, high functioning anxiety, high functioning depressives, burnout. You can see that, but what are people avoiding, and what are people choosing to do to numb the feelings of not knowing how it is to feel to connect to themselves, that they end up overworking, overstimulating, and never ever connecting with themselves, because gosh, why would that ever feel safe enough to do so? So yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, but kind of an understanding of actually about what has someone's journey been like, and everyone's journey has been different. And there's I love Frank Anderson's work on complex PTSD and relational trauma, and he talks about the fact that for those that came from who struggle with CPTSD, relational trauma, they're more likely to be impacted by PTSD and
Mm.
trauma because they don't come from a loving, connected background. So, whereas people who come from secure, loving backgrounds, I know this might be really difficult for some listeners to hear, so we need to hold this really carefully. But for people who have had really difficult backgrounds, trauma can impact them so much more than other. Did I say that right? So people who've come from very secure backgrounds would be less affected by events or big events in their life as they get older because they've got the tools to know how to regulate, self-soothe, connect. They've probably chosen relationships that are healthier because of a result of a secure background. Whereas when we come from an insecure background, we very often don't choose very healthy relationships in our life because it's so connected to self-esteem, self-worth. Gosh, it just goes on and on, doesn't it? You
Yeah.
can feel it. It can feel so big sometimes. So bringing it back to the smaller, what can you do in the, I took a big breath then, but
Mhm.
what can you do in the here and now for you? And there's a beautiful line that I come back to regularly, which is, what is the next kindest thing you can do for yourself in this moment? And I think just coming back to that, because I've gone very macro then. So just allowing people to come back to something a little bit more secure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say there when you were talking about the person who has never maybe been held and then that lack of safety to feel that it's safe to be held. And then you brought it back to bringing it back to the person and those little sort of micro things to start with. How important is it for that person, right? Because I think a lot of the time we can hear, and we do outsource, a lot of people outsource for external validation, okay? How important is it for that person to first create that safety within themselves before they, I guess allows not the right word I'm looking for, but for someone else to hold them. It, how important is it for them to create that safety from within with those little micro exercises before they can then receive it, I guess, from someone else.
Yeah, I love the question, but I think I love the question, but I think we also need to remember that we are relational beings and we aren't meant to do life alone. And
Mm.
we know, as you know, I know in my work as a therapist, and I'm sure you two do as well, that we heal in co-regulation.
Mm.
So a big part, and co-regulation for those listening who might not be aware, is regulating ourselves with another safe nervous system.
Mm.
And I think there's a danger on social media, particularly, and bearing in mind social media is huge now where people get a lot of information, is this isolation work, as if everything is about you and that it's your self-work and you need to do the work and you need to do this and you need to learn to self-regulate, and becoming very hard boundaried. And even
Mm.
as I do that, my body language, for those not watching, it's rigid, it's like hard. And I think we need to bring into the equation the fact that our nervous system, and the work of Stephen Porges and Deb Dana is about, the missing link is to get real regulation, real deep soothing regulation is knowing how to feel safe with another safe nervous system. So that's like the gold standard. A lot of therapy, or actually the main goal of therapy, is reparenting
Mhm.
clients
Mhm.
so they feel safe with another person, so that gives them the confidence to feel safe with someone outside of the therapy room. Because for many, they've never felt that intuitive safety. So it
Mhm.
just gives them that inner knowing that, I can feel safe with another safe nervous system. So yes, Jill, I really agree. It's about trying our best to know how to self-regulate and do that work and unpack our traumas and brave, courageous work. But that doesn't mean we can't connect with another until we've done that. We can get so much from regulating with another nervous system, a safe nervous system.
Safe. I think the key is safe,
It
right?
has to be
That
safe.
safe nervous system. And I see this a lot with people where they'll do a lot of their own work, but other people around them haven't. Their nervous system is very, feels maybe very unsafe. And so there can be that kind of um taking on of other people's stuff and taking on responsibility and which part's mine, which part's theirs, when especially if they're around people that maybe haven't done their work. And it's like, how do they then not assume, I guess,
Mhm.
responsibility for those around them as well, and knowing what's theirs
Yeah.
and what's not.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to relationships, and that can be romantic or even friendship,
Yeah.
or I know sometimes in my life it's actually been like in the workplace, some of those dynamics have kind of shown up like different actors, for want of a better word, who are almost kind of like very similar to, roles that like my parents probably played. How do you know what a safe nervous system looks like in someone else? Like, how can I tell, oh, I'm with a safe nervous system, or actually I'm trauma bonded to this person and we're kind of like replaying out like a similar cycle? How do you know that?
Again, a huge, huge question, isn't it? And I can feel myself thinking, gosh, if this was a client, it would be a lot of work,
Of
to
course,
understand.
yeah, just,
So,
just a
so
high level kind of general.
exactly. No, no, absolutely. I think it's about tapping into that inner knowing. But
Mm,
I would say coming from how we spoke about it in the beginning about coming back to um, that ventral state where your prefrontal cortex is online and actually really being incredibly honest with yourself. Not always easy, but not ignoring the things that might be giving you different pieces of information about the story. That being honest so that you don't just choose to see the good. So it's about sitting with your nervous system and thinking, does this really feel safe or do I want it to feel safe?
Great question. I think
Yes.
that is a great question to ask, because I think often, when either in my own life or I've had it with clients where they're replaying out, similar kind of trauma bonds, it's the want for it to be different. And actually it's the changing of their behavior to manipulate a different response. Whereas when we're with someone with a safe nervous system, you can be your full self and you can say your feelings. And actually that person is just will normally, with a safe nervous system, will just go, okay, like I accept that. And there would be a healthy dynamic as opposed to control, manipulation, maybe a little bit of gaslighting. So yeah, I think like really getting honest with yourself is the key. Like, am I changing my behavior? Do I want a different result? And actually, when I share how I feel with that person, or I ask for my needs to be met, is it met with like resistance, or I'm being asked to change myself, or is it met with that healthy, let's kind of have a talk about this, or it's fine that you're angry about that, or I accept that I did something wrong?
Gosh, imagine if everyone turned up in that way, though. And I always say, like, we should hold other people's vulnerability in the same way we'd want ours held. If we could just mirror that, it's so beautiful. I sometimes think that when you have space from relationships, notice how your nervous system feels when there's space,
Mm.
and listening to does it feel less anxious because I've not seen them for a while and it's actually what's going on there, just that constantly noticing the sensations in the body and how you feel and your mood, just there's so much information in there, isn't there, if we just take time to listen.
Yeah. I have a very quick follow-up question, because it's been in my mind for a while since you've started talking, which is about the role of AI. So when we talk about kind of safety, like we are seeing this rise in people who are using tools like ChatGPT, do you know, to regulate themselves in some way. So they're going online and they're sharing, this is how I feel today. And ChatGPT is excellent at making you at giving the exact answer, but it doesn't give that co-regulation. Like, what are maybe the opportunities or threats that you kind of see with this kind of rise of AI and maybe people turn into that tool as opposed to another human being?
I think we have to look at AI as not really being any different to, this is how I see it, as
Mhm.
social media in general, because I think that if we rely on social media connection in any way, or AI connection, we're desperately missing the art of actual connection, of being with another, you know, of understanding, actually I did this, I've talked about this in a podcast I'm launching this week on particularly around rupture and repair. We need to be able to have the rupture, to be able to have the repair, to be able to feel safe with our nervous system, to be in conflict with someone, to but come back to agreement. And the problem with social media is that everything is very much agreeing with what you say or giving you what you want to hear. So you're never learning that feeling of a slight conflict. And how do I then deal with that conflict? So real relationships, normal relationships in real life can be really complex, but then and deeply nuanced, and learning how to do the dance of that relationship in real life can never be recreated through AI or social media. So I think that would be my answer.
Mhm.
Great answer. Love that. I love that. Yeah. And oh my goodness, I feel like there's so much we want to talk to you about. And I would love to touch on your book
Oh, thank you.
while you're here. And you talk to us about why that book was so important to you to write and to have published.
Yeah. Um, Guy, I felt that come. I felt a bit emotional as you said that, because I think it was just a real need for wishing that people could understand themselves better. And I think sadly, so many people don't understand and then blame themselves for the way they are. And actually, if they just went through the layers a little bit, there's a reason for why they are the way they are. And understanding that and holding that with such gentleness and such compassion can be incredibly healing. And so the title Choose You is really about, it's not a selfishness perspective, it's about choose you too. Choose you in the way that you wished your friend would choose themselves. Choose you in the way that you wish the people around you would choose themselves, because not in a selfish way, but in a deeply caring, understanding, because then you'll show up in the world in a way that just feels lighter, softer. But when you understand yourselves, and I wrote a big chapter on this about understanding others, when you understand yourself, you really have the space to understand others. And, then all judgment disappears,
Mhm.
which can be frustrating in having that awareness as well, because you always meet everyone, however maybe unkind they are or awful they are, with compassion, because that's probably going on. And it could sometimes, I know my children say, oh, can you stop being a therapist, can you just be mummy and be on my side about this? But sometimes it's about understanding the other, can just make life so much easier for you. There's so much projection out there. And I think, yes, it was really written for that, about if you can understand yourself, you step into the world in such a different way.
You do. And I think what a gift to give yourself again, instead of outsourcing or numbing out or trying to achieve something to meet this to meet this unmet need for ourselves when we really understand ourselves. I know for myself and for Sarah and the students that come and train with us, it is almost that coming home to self and that self, oh, forgiveness and compassion and love, because you talked about when we unlayer all of those parts, and we actually spoke about this on your podcast, fear and anger and disgust and shame and all of that. Underneath it all is this part saying, love me. And to be able to give ourselves that first, the world, we see the world differently, and actually the world responds to us differently, because suddenly we're not hiding those parts of ourselves. It's like, I know this part, and I've been with this part, and I've held this part, and all its fear and shame and dark, but I forgive and I love, and I hold this part in so much love. When someone else, if there's a challenge or something from your past or whatever that may be, the rub isn't there, the sting isn't there. It's like, well, it doesn't sting as much. It's like, well, I know that I've been with this part. It can't, that can't hurt me. Your words, it might not be nice, but we see that actually that's more about this person than me. I don't take that on anymore because I've held those parts so deeply in love and compassion and forgiveness. And what a gift and what an empowering thing to be able to come back and meet those needs for ourselves. Yes, it's still beautiful to have that connection and to have someone else love us and receive us, but to be able to do all that and then the world responds differently. I feel like it's such a beautiful gift and an empowering thing to be able to do for ourselves and meet ourselves in that love and compassion.
I so agree. I so agree. And if you were talking about the other person there, the others, I was thinking, and when we do this work, we can actually really see those people so differently.
Yeah,
And in that means that you don't get so triggered,
for sure.
because it's just why would we don't have that need to jar up against. It's just, well, we're soft in ourselves, and there's that boundary up, that bubble, as I tend to call it, around me, that just, that's their stuff, and
Not mine. It's not
it's
mine.
not mine. Exactly. And it's the your world becomes a calmer place when you're there.
Yeah, it
Beautifully
really
said.
does. It
Yeah.
really does. I love how you described the book in particular, and it made me quite emotional the way that you opened it to say, how could you choose you in the way that you would want a friend maybe to choose, or the way that others, because I think, we can just outsource all of the time and want to manipulate and control our outside world. And this is a real invitation inwards. And you've given so much expertise on this, like the practical tools, the ladder, the cupping. I think people are going to take so much away from this episode. What is the best way for people to reach out to you? Like, where can they get the book? How can they connect with you on social media following this?
The best way probably is Instagram.
Hmm.
I'm on there as Helen Marie is my handle, but there's a dot between every letter, so it's H.E.L.E. Um, can you believe there are other Helen Maries when I try to get
No, but it looks really pretty when you put it in. It's very aesthetic.
Oh, thank you. So that's probably the best way. Or my website, everything's linked on my LinkedIn, my link tree on there. And there's my podcast, I don't think we talk enough about,
Mhm.
which comes out every Thursday, and my books on there as well. So everything's accessible through that platform really, and my website as well.
And is it possible to work with you one-to-one? I noticed that you've said you have private clients. So if someone wanted to connect and work with you on a one-to-one basis, can that be done online or is that always in person?
No, I do a lot of online. I work internationally, so I work with clients all over the world, but my practice is currently full and I have a long waiting list, but people can certainly come on that waiting list.
Mhm. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your
I feel
energy, your
so
expertise.
chill
I
after
always just feel like my
you're
heart
so
is
calm.
is really full after talking with you. And I think you're the deep embodiment, you know, of this work, which is so, so important in this space. So thank you for your time and thank you for your energy and expertise. I know our listeners will take so much away from this.
Oh gosh, honestly, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I could chat to you both for hours. I really could. So thank you.
Thank you.